Hi, I'm Michael Carrere, and this is Psych Exam Review. This is a practice question video in which we'll look at 10 practice multiple choice questions related to social psychology. Before we get to the questions, keep in mind that you always want to try to come up with your own answer first. So I'll pause after I read the question and before I show the multiple choice answers, and you want to use this time to try to think of your own answers. And you might want to pause the video if you want more time to do this. Then you can use the multiple choice answers to guide you. Hopefully you already know what you're looking for. And make sure that you also review any other unfamiliar terms that appear in the question, in the incorrect answer choices, or in the explanation. Okay, let's begin. Whether a culture has strict rules of etiquette or flexible standards for behavior relates to this cultural dimension. Masculinity, femininity, power distance, individualism, collectivism, time orientation, uncertainty avoidance. And this would be E, uncertainty avoidance. Cultures which are high in uncertainty avoidance tend to have clear rules for behavior in different situations, reducing an individual's uncertainty for how to behave, while in cultures with low uncertainty avoidance, expectations for behavior are more ambiguous. Randall wears clothing similar to that of his peers in order to fit in. This is an example of normative influence, de-individuation, reciprocal altruism, informational influence, propinquity. And this would be A, normative influence. Normative influence refers to pressure to conform and go along with group norms, rather than informational influence in which the behavior of others provides information about what is correct. A manager attributes a poor review to an employee's laziness, but attributes her own poor review to stress at home. This may be due to outgroup homogeneity, in-group bias, thin slices theory, homogamy, actor-observer bias. And this would be E, actor-observer bias. Actor-observer bias relates to attribution of behavior. Observers tend to focus on individuals, and thus their dispositions, to explain behavior, while the actors themselves are aware of the situational factors that have influenced their own behavior. James is a powerlifter who has trained for several years. With a crowd watching, he beats his personal record, perhaps in part due to the autokinetic effect, social loafing, the mere exposure effect, social facilitation, social identity theory. And this would be D, social facilitation. When a task is simple or well learned, the presence of others can improve performance by increasing arousal, while for difficult or novel tasks, this additional arousal can reduce performance or cause choking under pressure. Curtis helps his friend to move apartments. His friend then feels compelled to buy Curtis dinner. This demonstrates kin selection, just world bias, the bystander effect, the halo effect, the norm of reciprocity. And this would be E, the norm of reciprocity. The norm of reciprocity refers to a feeling of indebtedness after receiving a favor, which encourages the recipient to return a favor in some way. Henry thinks of himself as health conscious, but also smokes cigarettes, which may cause diffusion of responsibility, cognitive dissonance, pluralistic ignorance, risky shift, de-individuation. And this would be B, cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance refers to an uncomfortable conflict between one's thoughts and/or behaviors. This dissonance is generally reduced by modifying a thought or behavior, or by adding a thought or behavior. Henry might reduce his dissonance by quitting smoking, or by making excuses for his smoking. This researcher investigated several factors involved in poor group decision-making. Gert Hofstede, Solomon Asch, Stanley Milgram, Irving Janis, Leon Festinger. And this would be D, Irving Janis. Irving Janis proposed groupthink to explain poor group decision-making due to factors including belief in the superiority of the group, a charismatic leader, and minimization of dissenting views, among others. In his original study of obedience to authority, Stanley Milgram found that blank percentage of participants delivered shocks up to 450 volts. 1, 16, 65, 85, 98. And this would be C, 65%. In his original version of the study, Milgram found that approximately 65% of participants were willing to obey an experimenter and deliver electric shocks to a stranger up to the highest level of 450 volts. The recipient was an actor, and the shock generator was not actually delivering these shocks. Muzafer Sherif proposed that to reduce conflict and improve relations between groups, they should engage in superordinate goals, realistic conflict, social comparison, greater contact, discrimination. And this would be A, superordinate goals. Based on his study with the Eagles and the Rattlers at Robbers Cave, Sherif found that conflict between the groups of boys was reduced when they had to work together to solve larger problems that transcended their group memberships. Tim asks his father if he can go on a week-long trip with friends. His father refuses, which Tim expected. Tim then asks if his friends can stay over for the weekend, and his father agrees. Tim has made use of this persuasion tactic. The foot in the door technique, central root processing, the that's not all technique, the door in the face technique, the parent trap. And this would be D, the door in the face technique. The door in the face technique refers to making an initial very large request, which is expected to be rejected, in order to increase compliance on a second request, which now appears more acceptable. Okay, so that's the end of these questions. I hope that they were challenging, and I hope that you did well. Review any terms that were difficult or unfamiliar, and share any questions or suggestions that you have in the comments. Thanks for watching.